that are interested in holding educational versus, yeah, so it's a group of 20 universities. So,
that is wonderful. Yes, I look forward to hearing more about that. I hope we can connect. Jay Murphy, would you mind muting unless you're talking, because we're hearing a lot of thank you so much, appreciate it. And I see we have Heather Dodds, my friend, Craig Freilich, who has such a wonderful podcast, Howard Robinson, welcome, Elizabeth Knoop, Simonetta Pozzi, and that's all right, Jay. We know these things happen, but just you know, for the sake of being able to converse, you know, when you do need to speak, please feel free to unmute your mic. And JW is here. We're still a minute or so away from our official start. Hello, Craig. Hi. Yes, as I said, I've enjoyed your podcast many times. Great. Yeah, really good to have you here. And it now looks like it is 12 p.m. So we will have people continuing to join us. By way of introduction, I will say that this town hall, this WebXR Education Summit Town Hall, is sort of a traditional, if you can call it that, for something so new, but for our WebXR events. When we have our summits, we typically have a shorter town hall in advance that provides the opportunity for more people in the community to share their thoughts, what they're doing, and for us to have a more casual conversation that can maybe feed into, in some way, the summit that we'll be having next week, the longer event, 9-hour event. And Daniel Dabosky Bryant, welcome, my friend. Good to see you. Yes. Daniel is the executive director of the Virtual World Society. And there is Sophia Mashasha. Really great to have you here. Sophia and Daniel will be involved in the WebXR Education Summit next week. They will be hosting the green room. Daniel is hosting a panel, and Sophia will be conducting some case study interviews. So you will see them again next week as well. And hello, Tracy Cosgrove. Welcome. Great to see you. And Christy Fennison, another one of our wonderful colleagues. Hi, Christy. And Brian Richards, familiar face there. Yeah, great. And Sean. Hello, Sean Macbeth. Hi there. I won't be able to, we may have more people coming in and won't be able to greet everyone personally here, but thought I would take this time while we can. Hi, Gigi, welcome. And, but yeah, so this is a loosely organized event, more of an opportunity, as I said, for informal dialogue, for you all to share what you are working on, to meet one another, and to you know, start building your community in this space. I'm seeing one of our panelists, Lucia. Welcome, Lucia. Hello, hello. All
Hi,
right.
everybody. Nice to see you. Thank you for inviting me to this. Since
oh yes, we're very glad to have your participation.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Christy.
Gia.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, Lucia.
Julie. Hi. Sorry,
everybody.
I want. Yes. Hi, Dania.
Wonderful Italian welcome.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a whole bunch of friends just gathering in a room. It's really cool. It's like, hey, everyone, how's it going?
Yeah, it is that way. And that's, you know, for those of you who don't know, Julie Smithson and Sophia Mashasha and I are co-founders of XR Women, which is a group that meets every Wednesday on the Immersive Learning Research Network virtual campus, which is on the Rebella platform. And we meet every week. We've had well over 80 events now since our first one in November 2020. And it is a wonderful community where women working in and with VR, XR, have the opportunity to share their successes, to mentor one another, to learn from one another, and to form that sense of community so that we can come together when we need to and support one another in this journey that, as we were saying early before, I think most of you were here with Yinch. We're doing some really groundbreaking things here by working in this field. We're doing things that have not been done before. And I have found in some of my conversations around some practices, shall we say, at colleges and universities, that there aren't really established standards yet. We are in the process of establishing those.
Right now, so you have to, if you are in events, you have to go to the left-hand side. It says join session.
Oh, Elizabeth,
we gotta close on the mic.
Find helpful articles for comment.
Oh, that's Paul, is it? That's Paul. Hey, Paul, if you can hear us,
No.
could you mute yourself?
please mute.
I need you to log out of this.
Can somebody
I need you to get out of the
please
app.
mute
Go to the app and
Elizabeth?
restart the app,
Ben should
please.
be able to mute.
Yeah,
Right.
there
Okay.
you go.
Apologies.
We have to
everyone.
start
Oh,
from
she's
scratch.
not muted yet. We have to wait for unfortunately,
Elizabeth.
yeah, Elizabeth
Yeah.
has to mute, or Ben has to mute Elizabeth.
She's the host. Okay. All right. Great. So as I was saying,
You
if
don't
we-
see join session, start
Please,
session
please
event.
don't, just a second, Karen, don't start until we have this clear with our team, please.
Okay, you're in apps. You've closed. Okay, so you're
Ben,
Elizabeth
in the
needs
Oculus,
muting.
You're not in engage.
Ben's got to mute. There we go. Okay, go
There
ahead.
we go. We're back.
All right, great. Much better, yes. So as I was saying, in some of the work I do, including with a college that is part of the Metaversities project, and you'll hear more about that next week, we're finding that, we're having to sort of build structures and processes and ways of doing things from scratch, right? That there are new things happening when we are using XR or teaching in the metaverse that they haven't been done before, and so we ask around for advice from people who we think might know, but they're just figuring it out too. So creating this kind of community, learning from one another, and being able to share resources and information is massively important. And so that's one of the reasons that we are coming together for this town hall and for the Education Summit next week. I will also say that there are a lot of different ways that XR and the metaverse figure into education right now. We have existing apps and experiences that can be used as supplemental educational materials that can be assigned by teachers at various levels, including some pre-K use of things like AR in learning there, right? Through elementary school, into high school, and into colleges and universities. There is also the use of spaces, virtual spaces, in which to conduct education, right? And there is teaching our students how to be creators and builders with XR tools, which is enormously important. And we will address that next week as well. So a wide range of topics. And I think there's also something else that perhaps we didn't really address in our build out of the summit for next week, but that's sort of teaching how to be in the metaverse, right? How to be a citizen of the metaverse. And then maybe we can find a way to fit in something about that into our event next week at the last minute. An important topic that
Karen, let's not forget about avatars too, right? Like identity here. We're all about to replicate our identities and go into this metaverse, and it can be literally whatever we want. So how do we wrap that into education when we're already, that's a hard topic to even consider, but it needs to be discussed. And more and more, these platforms are starting to introduce avatar registrations and creating these identities. And then when anybody starts to engage in these experiences and start to collect, badges or NFTs and digital goods and things like that, what happens to them? So there's the digital identification part, and then there's what are we collecting along the way, and how does that stay with the identity as well? Not to mention the healthy mindset around having that digital identity. So there's a lot of topics there. I haven't had a chance to introduce myself. If you don't know who I am, I'm Julie Smithson. I'm co-hosting with Karen today and helping this conversation move along, but I'll also be co-hosting next week. While we're talking today, I've got a Miro board going. I'm going to try and make sense of all the points and things that we talk about to try and give everybody a tangible piece of, okay, what did we just talk about? Because as everybody knows, exponential growth straight up. And I said this in my meeting this morning, I feel like, Maverick Tom Cruise in the jet, right? Like going straight up. We've got to learn every day. We've got to manage that. How do we help build systems and processes to create efficiencies that will scale and that will be eventually interoperable as we deal with WebXR, right? But we also need to make sure that we have that healthy mindset. We create the right teams that surround us, and we surround ourselves with the people that will inspire us to create those great things. So maybe just as a recap of what Karen said, I've got a board going, and I'm gonna branch off into hardware, and we've got avatars, we've got platforms to talk about. One other thing was hybrid considerations, which I think is starting to happen a lot of places. What happens when you have a class that's both online and in person? And that goes to like business meetings too. What happens if you have a conference half online, half in person? You have to think about how everybody's experiencing what you're offering at the same time. So I have hybrid considerations, I have content, and then maybe discussions around NFTs and how that is implicated into education and learning, and then how to teach our kids to be creators, and also how to teach our kids to be part of the metaverse in the next generation. So yeah, does anybody have any other categories that maybe we haven't mentioned between Karen and I in the last little bit? This would be a great time to engage our audience now. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, I have. I've been thinking about something recently. Originally, when I got into virtual reality for education, it was just a fascination with what could be done, and the idea of that might be able to use this in the classroom with the refugees and migrant workers I was working with. And as it's progressed, my understanding of the overall topic of education for virtual reality has grown. And I think now, as much as to find solutions for on the ground situations with trainers and teachers in the classroom, or trainers within corporations and organizations, there's so much education needed for the industry, for the community, for all of the stakeholders. There's that many big concepts flying around now. We've got metaverse into the mix. People don't know what to think. A lot of people don't know what to think, including myself, really. I don't know what the metaverse is. But that really strikes me, that education is on the ground. It's with the decision makers, but it's with the broader public. And with the work we're doing with the Virtual World Society, part of the education is kind of framing the perspective and framing the context of what it is, what it means, what it can do, what it can't do, and how we should be approaching it, and how to be mindful of the risks as well. So there's a lot of like high level education needed, as well as kind of nuts and bolts.
That's absolutely right. Thank you for that, Daniel. I see Howard Robinson has hand up.
Oh, hello. Yes. Thank Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, hello, my name is Al Robinson. I'm founder of We Are VR Leaders. And one concept that I want to introduce is talking about how, I know we're talking about education and virtual reality, but can we also talk about how virtual reality can be used to impact at-risk communities and communities of color? Because some of the things we're doing, We Are VR Leaders, is we're integrating art, wellness, and social emotional learning programming to communities that don't traditionally have those resources available. And with virtual reality, we can do art therapy, mindfulness, all these kind of opportunities from their classroom or from their home. And I think that should be a good point is what impact virtual reality can have on communities that need certain, certain support. So just wanted to add that as well. So.
Yeah, I think that's really a fantastic topic and point to bring up, Howard. Thank you for that. And I wanted to say that, I know that Dr. Messina Morris, who may not be here on this call today, but will be on one of our panels next week, is she certainly, as if you don't know who she is a chemistry professor at Morehouse College, but is also the director of Morehouse in the Metaverse, of that project where they have a digital twin of the Morehouse College campus and have been conducting classes in VR there for about a year and a half now. They started at the beginning of 2021. And, we had earlier this year, there was a spate of bomb threats called into HBCUs, very disruptive and distressing for the students, and not just that, but other issues as well. And one of the things that Dr. Morris was doing was using VR for wellness and for helping students to deal with that kind of trauma. So that's an example of another example of the way that is being used. And so if I understand what you're saying, Howard, part of the point is that VR can be a more accessible, in ways, means of delivering those sorts of services, or right?
Yep. And one aspect also as a tool for equity, providing STEM opportunities. That's another reason a lot of these big at-risk communities don't have education lab or center, but with virtual reality, we already have programs where we're teaching them how to turn NFTs using Gravity Sketch and minting that. So we can do a bunch of different things with VR that we can do with a $100,000 education lab. So I guess accessibility and equity within virtual reality and how that can impact potential communities that need it the most. So.
Yeah, fantastic, great. Thank you. And we'll also hear of our speakers next week, who has been teaching VR development at a community college for the last 5 years. She'll be talking about some equity issues there in that sort of education. Anthony White, hello, welcome. What topics would you like to raise for us here?
One thing that always comes up for me, I teach high school students and have become pretty very interested in WebXR and its application in education. And I feel very lonely in the space, that there's not many other high school educators who are in that space, that it is largely reserved for colleges and universities that are kind of pushing the boundaries, whereas high schools are playing it safe for the most part and afraid to go out. So a lot of the WebXR technologies are built on open source technologies that allow anyone to create. Anyone has the ability to make something. And I see it's really important for students to be creators of this future of technology that they're going to be using. So with that being said, I think it would be really important, or that if we could come together as a collective to help develop or build or collect resources for teachers who would like to integrate or teach WebXR in the classroom. And that's not just utilizing the platforms, but building their own spaces with, say, using the A-frame language and how to integrate that into your classroom, using open source technologies like Blender and having really good accessible curriculum or materials that students can use, Gravity Sketch tutorials and resources, and maybe a place where teachers can see what others are doing and what they're creating, and potentially having a way for students to share with each other in other communities and say, this is what we're creating and making. I think that could really help propel this forward into the future.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a great point, and a mission, one that we maybe have just barely started to scratch the surface on in terms of collecting some of these resources and figuring out how to share them. But maybe that is something that's starting from here, with your suggestion and some of these thoughts that we've had, to really start building something as a community in terms of resources to share and opportunities for showcases of student work as students do learn to become creators with these tools. Julie, I know you're writing this down. You're taking this down, and we're going to use what Julie is doing in terms of mapping out what we are saying here, and so we will kind of feed that back toward the end of this session, and let's start, charting a path forward with putting them into action.
Yeah. I'd love to. I see some more hands up. So maybe let's do that. And then what I was going to say is maybe Tracy can talk. And the reason why I'm asking Tracy Cosgrove and calling her out, because she deals with hospitality. And I think this is like a huge grounding piece that we really need to teach. Like, no matter what, let's talk about hospitality. And, let's do the hands up right afterwards. But maybe Tracy, what are you seeing in the work that you're doing? And maybe just do a quick intro so everybody knows what you're doing. But you and I have had so many conversations over the years on how hospitality is that core, humanics trait to be able to take into these metaverses that we're about to build.
Yeah, and right from the beginning, I want to thank you as well for being an ear, and then to and the nice thing is about everything that we're doing is everybody is free and open to ask questions. In fact, I think Karen commented on one of my posts yesterday. If you don't ask, you don't get. And literally, I have asked and asked. I've sent a message. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and I think, and it's terrible because I do send a message then, and somebody replies, and I say, I'm sorry, I'm only doing this now because I've just remembered. But yeah, I've been working in the hospitality industry in Asia for over 20 years, and I started thinking how I was able to stop traveling as much. And then I came into VR, and it was 3.5 years ago I started working and creating virtual reality solutions. But I will put my hands up. I knew nothing. I just knew this was a good idea. So I literally started from never playing a Game Boy, didn't know technical. And we had this conversation before. I knew nothing. I can actually put my hands up now and say, I know the answer to that, because I've learned so much over the last 3 years. And if it wasn't for, I actually only heard about this half an hour ago and registered. And it was because I thought, this is where that one little thing that you might have missed, it's been the trigger. So in the hospitality industry, I've trained over 3,000 trainees now in the virtual, in the virtual spaces. We're in the process of building a full hotel. Before we were doing it in sections. So I had sections for housekeeping, front office, problems and complaints. We're now including finance, which I still know nothing about. But the good thing is more and more people are collaborating. And when I see, there was a very well-known company who were doing a virtual reality program. I had a look at it and I just took a deep breath and closed my mouth. I thought, okay, yeah, this is a tick of the box. This is not an impactful. So I'm in Amsterdam at the moment. This is where I've been for the last couple of years due to COVID. But yeah, that's where we are on the up.
Thanks so much, Tracy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll take some hand. We got some hands up.
Yes.
Yinch, how you doing, Yinch?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Julie. I'm just actually leading on from a point that Anthony had started, which was I think there is the audience of students they were talking about. They are very familiar with a lot of digital creation. You know, they're used to taking photos, making tweets, so I think that there is certainly a opportunity to try to reinforce the idea of them being digital creators or digital producers and not just digital consumers. And so I was just wondering whether there was a space or topic where we could talk about how education could draw on the mechanisms of social media or like the kind of the mindset of being a creator to let young people sort of own the medium rather than being people who are just told a thing that they have their own message, that they use it as a tool of expression rather than just a tool of consumption. So the idea of creatorship in education is just one of the things that it always strikes me as any medium that is serious needs to be able to empower creators. Like the reason why, why is creative writing? Why is creative writing so powerful? Why is video powerful? It's because the means of production are in everybody's hands. And I really would love to see WebXR have the same kind of both the mindset and tool set. I'm not saying the tools exist yet. I'm just saying we can draw on the momentum that people have in expecting to be able to have some agency, initiative, and create like creative power in this space. And so I'm interested in how drawing on that helps WebXR like gain acceptance with the audience that we're after. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And I think one of the things that you tapped into there was use of imagination and creativity. And that is one of the things that I like to say, and I'm sure others have said it too, but the limits in what we're doing here are not the limits of the technology, they're the limits of the imagination. And we do need to encourage creativity. That is what will set us apart from the robots and the AIs, right? Is our human ability to imagine and to create things. So I agree, you're absolutely right. We need to encourage that creativity. And I think that may require some change in the ways that education is conducted, right? I really believe that we are at a point of great transformation in education. We need to transform education so that it does tap into the enormous creative reserves and creative resources, imagination of all not just the young people, but of everyone out there, right? Yeah, so it's enormously important. Yeah. Daniel, so you have something to say.
I want to make 2 points. The first one in reaction to what you just said, I agree about needing to transform education. I think humanity is at the point where an educational model based on the industrial age 200 years ago is just not up to scratch anymore. So I think we need to transform, we need to disrupt. And I think one of the biggest opportunities in doing that is that we don't fall into the trap of the sage on the stage having all the answers and the middle-aged white man, middle-aged affluent white man, kind of white people saying we have the answers. I think we need to work with the younger generation. We need to leverage those people who it is essentially for. We need to leverage other models of education rather than it being a select few people from the industry saying let's reinvent it for this purpose. We need to be open-minded, and maybe it'd be an exploration for how we transform education rather than building a set of solutions. Otherwise, we run the risk of missing kind of the emergent value of what we can do here. That was the one thing I wanted to say. And then in response, I think that Anthony White, he was suggesting that we bring together resources, we bring together educators in VR ostensibly set out to do some of that. Now we mostly run events, and we have a great community kind of sat there. If you dig through a lot of our educators in VR Discord, there's just too many resources. You can't even keep up with it anymore. But I think there's an opportunity to compile it and structure that those pooled resources in a maybe a more accessible way. So from the experience we had, we gathered a lot of people together, but there are so many people now coming together and working that I think we can learn and iterate from a good beginning, and there's just so much opportunity to do more as well.
Great, thank you so much, Daniel. Appreciate that, and all the work that you do with educators in VR and with the Virtual World Society.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
Gigi Johnson, hello, welcome.
Hello, and sorry my camera wasn't on earlier. I was walking back from something, so we've seen my head bobbing along, which does remind me of some of the challenges here and what we're thinking of the place of where our students are when they're participating. I just want to mention a few things that haven't been mentioned. One is recognizing past work. People have been teaching in Second Life for more than 15 years. There's lots of pre-existing work that online Learning Consortium, OLC, all sorts of great things on how, and we tend to ignore all that when we think this is a new space, which is why most of us, when we all took our classes online during the pandemic, ignored almost all the pre-existing research on great online learning. Really need to be working on job readiness. I've been working for 22 years in programs that are looking at next generation creative technologies with students, and we're all separately building capacities instead of learning how we're getting our students ready to actually step into roles and assuming their programs. And then from the beginning of this call, the person who didn't know how to put themselves on mute, and then we weren't ready to mute them and spent 5 minutes with that we really still, as we've lived through the past 2 years, have a technology gaps where we really can't expect all of our students to be, and all of our faculty and all of our learners to have the same level of tech savvy to participate. So how we design for that. And my last thing throwing over the transom is that, are we going to build all our separate programs as we've done for film studies and music technology studies, and anticipate that a student is going to pick from our flavors of vanilla and chocolate ice cream, or build programs that are collaborations between universities, which is more than just taking our same class code and build something else. My soapbox.
Yeah, a lot of rich topics to dig in there, Gigi. Thank you so much. And the last one you just touched on, the sort of the multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary nature of a lot of work in XR. And certainly in my time working in higher education, you know, I spent time trying to have students work in teams on projects, so experiential learning, coming from different disciplinary perspectives and bringing what they knew from their disciplines together. And that is a challenge given the current structure of universities, and even in terms of administering universities and programs like this, especially for large ones, right? Because there you know, are these sort of established different areas, and trying to cut across those can be really challenging. So there's a lot of work to be done there, and I do think, you know, I'm a great admirer of academia in many ways, but I do think that it needs to undergo radical transformation too. So yeah. Sean Macbeth, what would you like to share with us?
Hi, everybody. So my name is Sean Macbeth. I'm the lead VR developer at a company called Diplomatic Language Services, where we do foreign language instruction. And we develop our own VR tools to support that language instruction. One of the issues that is top of my mind as a software developer for the last 20 years is maintaining accessibility in not just, well, both as a user of XR, but also as a developer of WebXR technologies. I think back to when I got into developing on the web and how all you really needed was Notepad and a GeoCities account to get started. And so today, that's really changed quite a lot. The complexity of all the tools that are available is so incredibly exploded. The system requirements, the security requirements. I'm also involved in some of the W3C consortium with WebXR. And I remember an argument 5 years ago when Google kind of unilaterally decided they were going to gate WebXR access behind HTTPS, and they admitted at the time that this was a carrot and stick approach to drive HTTPS adoption, at the cost of making WebXR easy to set up and run. And so I think that's a really big concern to me. Keeping WebXR inexpensive to develop, keeping WebXR available to anybody who's got a hand-me-down computer and just Notepad.
Yes, agreed. Hugely important. And if some of the, I think most of you will be somewhat at least familiar with WebXR. It's the larger sort of organization that we are here under the umbrella of today, or under the tent of. But part of the work there is to kind of help promote WebXR tools and help to move them forward. And there are initiatives like the Metaverse Standards Forum, recently named Metaverse Standards Forum, a group of standards organizations working together to try to ensure open standards and interoperability. That's just part of what you touched on there, Sean, but certainly the system requirements are another challenge in terms of accessibility. But we're also finding, really interesting tools that in some ways make creating easier, whether through drag and drop editors or tools like the Metaverse engine, for example, or even I know Austin Kane has been experimenting with tools like Midjourney on using text to create visuals. There's so many really interesting tools out there that can facilitate creativity. That doesn't touch on everything you said there, and others may have responses. But let's go on. Gigi, you look like you were first on my list again. Did you want to follow up on what you said before, or no? Okay. All right, well then let's go to Aditya Kumar. Hello, welcome.
Yeah, hi. Hi everyone. I'm right now speaking from India. You can refer to me as Adi, the first as ADI, that would be easier. So yeah, I wanted to touch upon two things. Before that, I will introduce myself. So I've been in technology, I've been in teaching, I've done both of them together. I used to take classes in the morning, and, I used to sit back in the night and code some tools for my students. And that's how I came up with one of the EdTech, learning management systems a couple of years back. And then I saw that the engagement is really low. We all know Moodles, we all know, the open source web-based learning management systems. Here, the engagement has been a key challenge for whether it's from teachers or whether it's from the students. That's the problem I've been trying to solve for the last 2 years, and we've been able to come up with 3D immersive, interactive objects for the students. Now, when we started doing this, yeah, one of the key factors, as you all have mentioned, few of you have mentioned, is that the creativity. If we do not use the creativity of the students and the children, which is very natural to them. In fact, University of Washington is doing great work. There's a kids team. There's a lab which is called as kids team, which is especially working on how children can be more creative than that we can ever think of. So in fact, if you all think of how we have lost our creativity age, we get educated and we actually lose our creativity, the natural creativity. So yeah, I mean, that's been the key element of what we are doing. Although we're doing the objects which are interactive, which could be used as a pedagogy, a tool in a classroom. But then we are trying to get the students involved to create them themselves. But here, there's one key challenge that we found. It's the policy that is missing. It's the policy. I think this is one of the core topics that needs to be addressed. There needs to be a policy for kids to be able to create value, create learning, and then be able to kind of leverage that. So this is what I think has been missing. I've been searching all over the world for a great policy for children. Here in India, it's I'll give you an example. 2 years back, when the whole world was sitting at home, children over here were given a great project from in India, that they could design toys at home, and they could go into a hackathon, and they could submit all these ideas of their designs. And trust me, like, there were 100,000 children who came up with with 20,000 ideas, and all of them great ideas. But then at the end of it, all these ideas, where are they going? Like, is there policy for them to be able to at least earn something out of it, support their education, whatever it is? So this is one area I want the discussion kind of to be getting into it. That is the policy. The second part I see as, I have been in the classroom as a teacher. It's really challenging. The technology is ever changing, and it's changing faster. So it's really difficult for the teachers to really catch up with their own students. So we have like at least 2 generations gap between our students and us. And when we try to kind of get with them, it's really difficult. So what's in there for teachers to be able to really participate and be creators themselves in this metaverse that we are creating, although smaller pieces of it, each and every one of us. But then, yeah, how do we make teachers inclusive into creation and adoption? These are the 2 points that I wanted to raise.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Adi. Yeah, I love the thought of 100,000 students creating things. And yeah, I'm wondering about portfolio opportunities of using some kinds of portfolios, digital portfolios. I know there are those out there, but how can we make sure that what they have created they can preserve and share with others and build on, right? Demonstrate what they can do. And the policy issue is a big one, because I think that in many places our legislators just don't understand the technology and what it is capable of. And so part of our job, is to educate them, right? Yes, that is a challenge. And there are groups that are forming links, like the XR Association, and even Meta, I know, has a policy program, right? So there are attempts by large companies to sort of influence policy, which could be, both good and bad. But there is a lot that needs to be done in that regard. And yes, we do need that sort of leadership as we forge forward in this exciting journey. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Caroline Dennis, you have your hand up.
And I'm getting so much out of the comments that people are putting forward, and many people who have spoken already, Daniel, and I know others, and it really resonated with me about the first is making it appealing. And I have a son, and I know that many of our kids who are in the ages of anywhere between 13 and 19 is that they are already creating in their own communities, even though they wouldn't call it that. But we do have to really look and involve the voices of younger audiences as we are creating solutions, because I do believe that there's sort of a blocking out of, oh, well, the STEM programs. I think we made a lot of mistakes around STEM education. I was definitely a part of a lot of those evolutions of trying to engage more students at a younger age. But I really do believe that there is opportunity to provide this of thinking about what's the narrative, what is the message we're sending? Are we sending them the message of, look at all these choices and sign up, isn't that cool? You can be a creator. I think it has to be something else. It has to engage them differently. So I am still learning about that myself. And then the other point I wanted to make is that in terms of universities and being able to, I know you mentioned, Karen, about being able to work together across those universities, and I think this community is outstanding about it. But in my experience, when I'm speaking to startup founders or people who are building tools that can be utilized in higher ed, is it oftentimes is on deaf ears. And it's not the people who are working there and teaching and learning, it's administrative bodies who are protective. They are, we've got to make it, we've got to become relevant, we've got to stay alive. And so I think there's a lot of this work being done here. And then one other final point in that is that I'm involved in the blockchain and startups in some decentralized communities, is that the startup ecosystem for crypto companies and for blockchain companies, whatever opinion you have about safety of cryptocurrencies where we are today, they're doing an exceptional job of iterating and partnering very quickly. So I have a startup that I advise that's doing a talent ecosystem for early entrants to blockchain and crypto careers. They've already, and they've only been in existence for 12 months, they've already created partnerships with other companies to help them drill down and repivot until they find that thing that will work. They're doing that really well, and they're doing that really fluidly. So I would love to see a place where we can have the ability to bring in other companies that work with other companies, consortiums, if you could call that. That's something I think will help as we try to keep building something that is both appealing to the audiences that we're trying to reach, and also build solutions that really, like you say, create creators. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's wonderful, Caroline. I think someone in the chat said here, and I will second that. Yes, thank you very much. Lucia, very glad to have you here today. Lucia Benatti is one of our speakers next week at the full WebXR Education Summit. What would you like to share with us?
I have been also incredibly inspired by this conversation. There are so many things that I would like to say about all sorts of things. I will connect a little bit with what Caroline was saying about the university administrators having deaf ears. Imagine when that happens, if you try to do something in WebXR from the humanities, then I can tell you horror stories, but that's something that Daniel has said before that seems to me that is incredibly important is the fact that as we proceed into WebXR or into the XRs in general, we realize how much bigger than our project or even our university, how much this is absolutely fundamental, because it's changing so many deeply conceptual ideas about what it means to be here and to do things as humans. Someone before talked about humanics, but and also I resonate very much with what both Sean and Howard were saying about accessibility. I do think, however, that when we talk about accessibility, we talk about equity, we talk about really immense change. We still are kind of keeping a blind spot about the fact that we are not doing this multilingually or multiculturally. So that, in fact, by definition, we're already creating a lack of accessibility by not, we talk about XR being free for everybody, but it's at this point free for everybody who speaks English. And I see we are an international, and I see many people coming from places in which the majority of the population don't speak English. And so are we thinking, I know that, there's so much, as you said before, Karen, there is so much to be thinking about and so much that we are doing from scratch, that even starting to think how we're moving this to, all of the hundreds of millions of people who only speak Spanish, or hundreds of, of people who only speak different dialects of Asian. Yes, I mean, I think you follow me. Yeah, I guess that's something that it's, when we're talking about changing education, if we are not thinking it in a globally, thus in a way that exceeds the English realm, we are still not, we are still keeping it very selective, very for us, I guess.
Yes, agreed, Lucia. And I think there are some interesting experiments going on around language that may not entirely address what you were talking about, but there are things like, I know that Rob Terrio at Georgian College, or Georgian College, where Rob Terrio, one of our colleagues, works, is doing things to creating experiences to teach certain Native American languages, sometimes to children from those communities who have been separated from that language. The language has been lost to them, and doing it in an innovative way in home-like settings in VR. And Michael McDonald will be on one of our panels tomorrow. Gold Lotus, also known as, he does a lot of teaching with languages in VR. And then there are programs like FrameVR.io, so a web-based platform that has an amazing translation tool, where you can speak and have something translated in the chat, which is really fun. How accurate it is, I don't know. How many languages it covers, I don't know, because obviously there are many languages out there, and that has to be built into it. But I think there are some interesting experiments there. But you're right, English language does seem to be dominant in a lot of what we're doing, and certainly for those of us who are native English speakers, it's hard to see beyond that when everyone else is accommodating themselves to the language that we speak. Just want to make one other brief point about something you said, and I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but this brings to mind something that was said by Nicola Liberati, a philosopher of VR, who talks about the ways that some of these XR tools actually will change our perceptions of our bodies and of what we are and of what we can do through allowing us new capabilities. And I think we could talk for a long time about the way we already have those, and think about tools that we use as extensions of our bodies. But I think that's a fascinating topic and one that I, like to have the time to think about more in the future. But yeah, let's move on to Rolf.
Yeah, hello. I already introduced myself at the beginning, but for those that haven't been there, my name is Rolf Kruse. I'm a professor in Germany and teaching media computer science stuff. And we have a group of universities in Germany that joined for exchanging experience with building up, designing virtual learning environments. And I would like to emphasize on something that came up in the last speeches. It's about what is the specific thing to WebXR. It's web, it's easy accessible, it's a technical standard, not fully evolved, but I think it's important because this is the WebXR education from that I was attracted to. So we have a standard with easy accessibility, and standardization would make it easy to connect the worlds that we have. And I think that's a specific chance that I expect from having and using and learning and evolving WebXR. And so directly from connecting, I would like to emphasize on the same thing, like I think it was Lucia, that international perspective should be interesting to follow up with all its problems or challenges, but with the qualities of a global community, and to make that not only as an international video call, but really to have some international space there, and not only to have us there, but to have our learners, our target group there. That's what I would like to develop with you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Yes, challenges, but opportunities, and some challenges that we shouldn't shy away from. Julie, you were.
Yeah, I was just going to add, as usual, I'm taking notes, so I'll be able to share at the end here. So I just wanted to share a few things. So I think, addressing the WebXR aspect. First of all, breaking the barriers to access. That's the piece right there. Is nobody really wants to download an app anymore. Systems are starting to integrate with each other, and it is happening in the open source in the web. So that piece is happening. It's all the other pieces that, like the avatar components. The multiplayer is huge. Who wants to learn by themselves? Nobody. That's why we're all here together, because we want to learn with each other, right? So going into these worlds now, the multiplayer aspect is a huge draw on students of not having to do something alone. And then they can, from there, they can find communities of, similar like-minded individuals that they can become inspired by, and creating these communities in your schools or your organizations. That's the draw, is because half of us are at home, half of us are in class. The main thing is we want to be together. So creating that platform where people can come together as an identified person will encourage that piece to learn. I know that there's the whole safe space, the cybersecurity, that's a whole web summit on its own. But starting to think about how all these considerations come into play is huge. And being able to be led by a teacher who can literally corral people into a focus. That's another interesting piece of technology that's starting to take place in some of these platforms, that you can do that and keep the attention and guide the students on what to focus on and look at. Gamifying experiences. One of the things that Karen and I are working on with an enterprise client is using a three-pronged approach to engage the learner into what do they have to preview, and then what do they have to try and do with that 3D object, and then how do you test them, and what are those performance test questions. So that three-pronged approach keeps that user engaged, and then, oh, you got that right? Great, you earned a badge, and that badge goes towards their towards an NFT, that can be then translated into, yeah, I'm going to go back because I want another NFT, or I want to put another badge on my certificate, that sort of thing. So gamification is really super important. As you know, we're competing against, education is competing against Fortnite and Roblox and all the other things out there, and everything there is gamified. So we have to turn education to a gamification process that's interesting, intriguing, will reward students, bring them back. And I love the fact of, creating that, using social media to figure out how to, help people solve things with students for so long. They don't know how to solve their own problems. So creative problem solving is a big asset right now to the skill sets that we were just talking about earlier, and becoming adaptive. That's one of the things that I was doing a talk the other day just on new skills in the metaverse and how to be ever changing, not just to be able to adapt, but to become adaptive. Because every day is going to be different. There's going to be new things coming at us all the time, new technologies, integrations, teams, people need to learn to become adaptive. And I think that's one of the things that we don't teach in school. So how do we teach them that and to become divergent thinkers that, initiate that creativity process? So I'll stop there and let somebody else share, but just wanted to share some of my thoughts that I'm jotting down in the making sense of today.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Julie. And thank you for your sense-making efforts, which you're so very good at. So I see Monica Osborne has her hand up. It's great to have you here, Monica.
Yes. Hi. So first of all, Julie, yes. All of the things you just said, those are the things that super, super excites me. Completely agree with all of those, but also was taking some notes to some of the things some of the prior people said. How do we get that? How do we make that accessible? How do we get people, and the fact that we're doing all these wonderful things, but it's falling on deaf ears, or the gatekeepers, all of the things. I myself, I kind of have a split experience in my world. Working half in K-12 and then now my second half in corporate world. So seeing, from a learner standpoint, wanting to create creators and then seeing them thrive in, the adult world. So the one thing that I, would like to throw in here is that what needs to be done is, or I should say from my experience, what gets measured gets done, or what gets measured is what money is thrown at to be able to enable us and make these things accessible. So that would be, the one point that I would make. And when I talk measurements, I mean standards, whether they be K-12 state standards or university standards or, adult requirements, right? If we make it a requirement, if we make it a standard, it gets measured, it provides purpose, which provides equality to everyone, because we're saying this is important. And if it's important and it's measured, then it's something that gets done. So to me, I feel like that's a really kind of point that kind of gets missed between the operational side or the political side, or, whatever the school systems, the teachers have to focus on. And then the choice is out there. So if we can kind of bridge those gaps to the cool stuff, but making it meaningful, I see that being a huge, gap that would definitely expedite all of this and make it accessible.
Yeah. And when you say meaningful, Monica, I love that, because I think that ties into building the value of learning and how students need to, taking their designs of what they've made and being able to, add it to an NFT and create a value out of it, and them seeing their work out of that. It's like that whole visualization process. Who is it that somebody was talking about? I think it was Jens, actually. You might have talked about this at the beginning, just the creation ideas and, encouraging the kids to be creators and using their creativity to create value. So how do we create that where there's a policy to create, right?
Well, and it's a mind shift too, because I think you brought up the point, you know, that those types of things are STEM or they're elective classes. That's a mind shift change that we need to start pushing. Is it's not just fun stuff, it really is the future, right? Mm-hmm. So making it a high, you know, putting it up there with your basic reading and math skills, there should be technology, and this should be included in that, because that is our future. But thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It looks like Karen might have stepped out for a second. I'm not sure. Oh, there she is.
I'm back. Yes, yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Monica. And Adi, you have something.